What's good, YouTube? It's Justice. I used to be Pay, and today I'm back with another video. And real quick, before I get into this video, make sure you leave a like, leave a subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and it doesn't cost you any extra money. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video. Nobody. There is no sponsor. But today in this video, I'm going to be talking about why having a core fan base is super important. And honestly, it might just be more important than popularity, and it definitely is more important than being hot. Having a core fan base is one of the most important parts of being an entertainer, especially a rapper. And honestly, you can see this point reflected in a majority of the most recent album sales of these rap albums in 2023. This has always been something that I've said whenever I talked about rap and rap music, but it's just been something that got recently brought up again as I looked at Rylo Rodriguez and Lucki's numbers on their recent projects. Rylo just sold 35K, Lucki just sold 38K. Now, mind you, I think both of those projects are really, really good, so that may play a part as well, but, you know, in general, we can't really say that for sure because music is subjective, so there may be people that like it, there may be people that don't like it, but overall, there was a pretty positive reception to both of those albums, so I just wanted to put that out there as well. But Rylo Rodriguez and Lucki both selling over 30K is super, super impressive nowadays because everything is really down. Like, a lot of album numbers recently have been really, really down, but it just goes to show that these guys have really strong core fan bases, and that having a core fan base can get you album sales. It can get you to places you want to be a little bit more reliably than just being popular in general. Because if you look on the other hand at somebody like Coi Leray, who's a million times more popular than both Rylo and Lucki probably combined, she just sold 10K on her project. And she sold 10K on the one before that. And I hate to say this, but even if you look at somebody like Lil TJ just sold 22K first week on his project. Less than Lucki and Rylo. Actually, both Lucki and Rylo outsold Coi Leray and Lil TJ's albums combined. Now, that's not for me to say that those projects are bad because I've already listened to Lil TJ's project and I actually thought it was pretty solid. I haven't listened to Coi Leray's project, I'm gonna be honest, which, I mean, I guess that's not something super rare because clearly a lot of people haven't. But I will say it goes to show that having a really, really invested core fan base is more important than just being overall popular. And I know Lil TJ does have a pretty solid fan base, but we can see that it's not as solid as people may have thought it was. It's not like a Rod Wave fan base, you know, where Rod Wave, even if he's not having a super hyped up year and doesn't have like, you know, a super crazy hit, he's still going to do his numbers. Like, there's a difference. There's a very obvious difference between a Lil TJ core fan base and a Rod Wave fan base, or a Lil TJ core fan base and a Lucki. Like, there's just a very obvious difference. It's really obvious when it comes to Coi Leray. I think she's like the poster child of, you know, no core fan base but extremely popular. But I think even Lil TJ suffers from this. And you know what? Here's a hot take that you might not be ready for. Another artist who kind of suffers from this is Kodak Black. Kodak Black's last project, I don't know if anybody was paying attention. Kodak Black's last project sold about 20K first week, 22K, I believe. Kodak Black, one of the biggest artists from that SoundCloud era, from the 2016 XXL Freshman, the guy who just had a #1 hit maybe a year ago, 2 years ago now, just sold 22K. And having a core fan base is so important, especially nowadays with like people having shorter attention spans and like the internet making everything so much faster, TikTok making everything so much faster, because being in the entertainment industry, no matter what it is, rapping, acting, being a streamer, a YouTuber, whatever it is, when you're in the entertainment industry, there's ups and downs. It's a roller coaster. It's topsy-turvy. It's very rarely stable. And you're always going to have your ups and you're always going to have your downs. Unless you're like a Drake, a Kendrick, or a Ye, where you're always just going to be up no matter what. Everyone else is having ups and downs, and they're fighting those things throughout their career. Even look at somebody like Lil Baby right now, who's kind of in a down period. His tickets aren't selling that well. People online are kind of roasting him. Like, everyone has ups and downs. But if you have a core fan base, they can kind of stabilize you and set sort of like a baseline to where you're never really going to fall below that unless, you know, it's just the very end of your career. But they will stabilize you. Without that core fan base, you're going up and you're going down until who knows where. If you look at the fall-offs of like somebody like DaBaby or like Fetty Wap, these were guys who were extremely, extremely popular. They were #1 hits. They were all over the internet, everything. They were all over the charts. But when they weren't as hot as they used to be, they plummeted. And why did they plummet? Because they never had a core fan base. DaBaby never really had a core fan base. Everyone liked DaBaby. You know, he was popular. Everyone knew who he was. People liked his music, but they weren't diehard fans of DaBaby like, you know, there's diehard Cardi fans or there's diehard Youngboy fans. And same thing with Fetty Wap. There aren't diehard like Fetty Wap. Like there weren't Fetty Wap lifers just out there. Like that wasn't really a thing. And so once they stopped being hot, because it happens to everyone, not everyone's going to be hot 24/7. Once that hotness came off, their career just plummeted with no end in sight. Now, obviously, they can come back, and DaBaby had a hit like not that long ago. You can always come back, but there's no stability in your career if you don't have that diehard fan base. And it's the reason why somebody like Coi Leray can have 37, almost 38 million monthly listeners on Spotify, which is an insane amount. That's a crazy number, but sell 10K on a project. While on the other hand, Rylo Rodriguez can have 1.5 million, which isn't very much, and sell 35K first week. Like, that's the main difference, okay? Rylo Rodriguez's project is probably better than Coi Leray's. I probably am not stretching by saying that. I haven't heard Coi Leray, so I don't know. But let's just say it is. That still doesn't mean anything because there's a lot of projects that people don't really like that still sell well. People hated CLB when it first came out, the Drake project. They you know, a lot of them still do. But it did really, really well. So it's not just, oh, the music was bad, so people didn't like it. No. It's a popularity thing, and it's also a fan base, and how active is your fan base thing. People have been clamoring for new Rylo Rodriguez music, and then when he finally delivers on that, and he has the support of really the culture in general, like people just really like Rylo Rodriguez and want to see him do well, you see that reflected in his album sales. But when you have somebody like Coi Leray, who's a pretty big star, she has pop hits, she's on the Spider-Man soundtrack, she's got hits all over the Billboard, she's done stuff in the past, she's in the industry. Like, when somebody like her drops, there's nobody really checking for it because there's no real core fan base. There's popularity, and if Coi Leray was hot, I'm sure people would be dying to go listen to her album. If she was hot, people would be listening to it. But when you're not super blazing hot, your numbers are going to reflect that if you don't have that fan base. That's why it's so important. And that's why I think Rylo Rodriguez's numbers are so impressive to me, because the dude has, again, I really need to emphasize this, 1.5 million monthly listeners on Spotify is not a lot. That's not a lot. So for him to be able to sell 35K, that means people just generally are fans of him. They're generally just fans of him. They want to check out Rylo Rodriguez. If he drops a project, they're going to go listen. It's really impressive. Like if I went to a Drake concert, right? And I say a Drake concert because that's like the ultimate microcosm of like rap fans. That's where you're going to have all the casual rap fans and then a lot of diehard rap fans mixed in there as well. If you went to a Drake concert and just asked everybody there, do you know Coi Leray? Probably like 60%, maybe more, would probably say yes, I'd imagine. I can't take this, I can't say this for certain. This is just my, kind of hypothesis, but I'm sure that at least close to half of the audience would know who Coi Leray was. But then if I asked, do you guys know who Rylo Rodriguez was? Maybe 10% of them would be like, yeah, I know who that is. So there's a major difference in terms of popularity and clout when it comes to Coi Leray and Rylo Rodriguez, or Lucki and Coi Leray, or even Lil TJ and Rylo Rodriguez and Lucki. There's a major difference in clout there, but there's also a major difference in core fan base. And when you have that core fan base, you can succeed. You're always going to be somewhat successful. When you're a hot artist and you don't really have a core fan base, yeah, it's great when you're up here and everyone's listening to you. You don't really need people to get into you. It's kind of like Youngboy, right? When Youngboy is really hot, it takes a long time to get into Youngboy just because he has so much music. There's so much like lore surrounding Youngboy. You can't just like jump on the NBA Youngboy bandwagon one day. With DaBaby, you could just jump on the DaBaby bandwagon. There wasn't that much there. It was, oh, he makes these songs. These are cool. He's DaBaby. He's a tough guy. He's from North Carolina. There's not really much there. There's not that much lore. There's not that much to understand. But when it's somebody like NBA Youngboy, it's harder to get into him when he's super hot, like DaBaby. But on the other hand, when they're super low, it's harder to get off of them. It's harder for you to leave an NBA Youngboy once you've already invested all that time to understand who he is, understand his music, understand the backstory. You're probably more likely than not always going to be a fan of Youngboy. If you're a fan of DaBaby in 2019, you could drop DaBaby like this and, it's whatever. Hey, his music was cool, but I'm not really missing out on much. That's the difference. With somebody like Rylo, there's a lot there. There's layers, and people like to get into that, and that's where that core fan base comes from. People love him. People down south, that's their guy. But with somebody like Coi Leray, if she drops a hot song, you'll listen to it. If she doesn't, she doesn't. Who cares? There's nothing there. They don't really. There's no fan base. There's nothing to really get into. Now, that's not for me to say like Coi Leray's boring or DaBaby's a boring person, but just in general, there's not a lot there. outside of just their popularity and, oh, that they're hot. And that's why somebody like Rylo, somebody like Lucki, who's been building and working in the underground and putting together stuff and putting together music and putting together a fan base, can do consistent numbers and can consistently grow. It may not be exponential growth like Coi Leray just blowing up out of nowhere with a song like No Parties. It's not going to be that type of growth, but it's going to be that growth that's sustainable and that can last you a pretty long time in comparison to just, oh, I have a crazy song that blew up, I'm up at the top of the charts, I have another song, and then boom, a year later, I drop to the bottom of the charts. So it's always more important to have a core fan base. And this just is something that was brought up to me recently. I just wanted to make a video on it because I really wanted to get my voice out there on this topic, because I think it's really important to say this. I think it's really important to establish this in a lot of people's minds, that core fan base is more important than like hotness. I won't say popularity in general, but hotness, core fan base is way more important than that. Hotness comes and goes. A core fan base does not. A core fan base is going to be there at your lowest. They're going to be there at your highest. So I just wanted to say that real quick. Shout out to Rylo Rodriguez, man. 35K is really impressive. I know he's been the topic of this video pretty much, but it's just really impressive to me. The dude hasn't dropped in like 3 years. He comes back and drops a project and sells 35K. The dude comes back and sells more than Kodak Black. That's really impressive to me, and I like the project a lot. So I'm really becoming a fan of Rylo Rodriguez, and I just thought it was really cool that he was able to do something like that after such a long break and not really having a whole bunch of hype online. There's not people, oh my God, I can't wait for, like, you don't see that on like the rap pages. Oh my God, I can't wait for Rylo Rodriguez. He's just a guy that does his thing, drops his music when he drops it, and people go check it out. And I think it's really cool that he's able to be successful in this modern era where a lot of artists are struggling to sell records. And I know people are gonna be like, oh, 35K is not that much, bro. You're gassing it. Yeah, 35K is not that much maybe for like Drake, but for somebody the popularity and the size of Rylo Rodriguez, that's really impressive. That's super impressive. You got to be relative to the artist you're talking about. Obviously, 35K isn't great numbers for like Lil Uzi Vert, but 35K for Rylo is good. 100K for Drake would be a flop, but 100K for somebody like Yeet would be crazy. So you got to be relative. Obviously, in general, 35K isn't anything to like write home about. It's not any crazy, like that's not ridiculous numbers. But for somebody like Rylo to do that when a lot of these artists are flopping, it's pretty impressive in my opinion, and it shows how strong that core fan base is. But that's just my opinion. I'm just on here talking. I'm just a college kid trying to make some money to pay off his tuition. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But if you made it this far, I greatly appreciate it. Leave a like, leave something, a comment, tell me I look stupid today. I don't know. Whatever you got to do to make yourself feel better. Leave a like, leave a subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Have a great day. Be safe. Be blessed. Peace.